Hi-ho and bright suns, folks. Welcome back to another episode of D Plus Us Weekly, the show where we talk about shows exclusive to Disney Plus, episode by episode, week by week, for our enjoyment and yours. I'm one of your hosts, Griffin, and now Griffy D-Pad, and with me as always is the wonderful, the amazing Mr. Mitch George. How are you doing out there in the lonely depths of space?
I sense a disturbance.
What a show we are talking about today, folks. We are continuing our weekly episodes on Star Wars Skeleton Crew with episode 3, very interesting as an astrogation problem. And I just gotta talk to whoever is naming these episodes. Like, y'all,
Let's have fun.
So we're having fun. I respect it. I appreciate it. You have totally changed the way that I have to name these episodes on YouTube. And for that, I fault you and I'm mad at you.
You'll be fine.
In all seriousness, though, this is a fun show. We're here to talk about episode 3. Of course, folks, this is a show that is full spoilers, so if you have not seen the episode, go watch the episode and come back. Otherwise, we are going to talk about all of the nitty-gritty details of this week's episode of, Captain Silo, Jack, whatever we're calling him.
Crimson Jack.
Crimson Jack, or Captain Silvo. Or whatever. We're hitting all the things today.
All the names.
Bits and pieces of housekeeping before we jump into it. Of course, there's new episodes of the normal show coming soon. Episode all about Dream Productions. Disney Pixar's newest short series, I guess is the best way to put it. Limited series?
Miniseries?
Miniseries,
I think, is appropriate.
Yeah, I think miniseries is what we were using in the episode. So
I think that's what they billed it as well, and will likely submit it for the Emmys as under that category as well, I would assume.
Go check that out. Go check out other episodes of that show. Go check out other episodes of this show. We have our first episode of the first 2 episodes. This one, we're putting this up as quickly as we can, folks. Our schedules are very weird at the moment. So
someone's moving eventually. Someone had a child. There's a lot going. Also,
it's just the holidays too.
There's that too.
It's
yeah.
like
if there's last year when we pre-recorded a whole bunch of stuff, so we didn't have to do this over the holidays.
Hey, look, we started doing that.
We probably should have done that before the baby came.
Yeah. Well, that was the intention.
I know.
Anyways, we're talking about episode 3. Mitch, what do you think of this week's episode?
It's a fun continuation of this story. I want more. The weekly release schedule leaves me wanting more every time, which is why I'm looking forward to the next, dropping or like episodic show that's dropping with What If Season 3, where we're going to get, episodes every day the same way they did with Season 2. That would be nice for something like this, or, dropping 2 episodes a week, because I'm left wanting more. And honestly, if it weren't for us recording this, I would probably just wait to the end and binge it, because I do feel like the drip feed of what's going on here isn't quite enough for me, at least as a viewer. So I can imagine that there are other folks out there that are either waiting until this fully drops or just not looking at this at all, because there isn't a lot happening.
Oh, yeah, I would not blame people for that. The only thing that's really keeping me going, at least in this episode, is the drip feed of hints that these children in a society are from the Old Republic. And we got some more of that this week that I'm actually kind of excited about, particularly revolving around Alderaan, which is why I'm laughing at me saying surviving. It's definitely an interesting show. I think it's very cute. It's very adorable. I love what they're doing in it. And I love that just every week we get a new little guy. They're really having fun, I think, with the different types of aliens that you can have in Star Wars, and especially. But also just where you can be with the different characters. I mean, I think a standout at the moment for me in particular is KB. And like where that character in particular is going, like where they're forcing Jude Law's character into this position of like actually giving them information by the end of this episode versus the beginning where they're just trusting him wholeheartedly. There's kind of this revelation that yes, he's Captain Silvo, like we all kind of understood that, but he's also known by this other name, this Crimson Jack, which is a character that you would know from Star Wars comic books, but I think most of those comic books are no longer canon. So it's
I
interesting
think
to
there is
see them.
one. I think there's one comic that is still technically canon with the Crimson Jack
There
character, but again,
is.
it could have just been an assumed pseudonym or something that he took from someone who
So
fell
there is
during
one
the
where he's
rebellion or
still
something.
well. There's one that's still canon, and he was a space pirate, and he was a rival of Han Solo's. And I'm not surprised for a character like this to have a good amount of history to him that we just don't know because we, frankly, have never really explored space pirates in Star Wars. Like, I love the bits and pieces that we're getting here from that kind of stuff. Also, just want to shout out these kids again. I think these kids are doing a fantastic job in this, especially Ravi Kabat-Khanus, who plays Webb. Like he's just knocking it out of the park, I think.
I also, again, you shouted out Kuriana Crater, the actor behind KB earlier, and I just wanted to add to that. I think that character is so mature for this, the way that they're telling this story. I think probably something to do with the cybernetics, the augmentations, whatever have you from a character design perspective. But I think the actor herself is also doing a great job of bringing this character to life and the way that she stands up to Jod, Captain Crimson Jod, whatever you want to call him.
Captain Crimson Jod. That's his name now.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Captain Crimson Jod. I think there's a lot of really interesting dynamics there where, he wants to be in charge, but he knows he's not in charge, but he's also the adult in the situation and also a force wielder who knows what he's doing. So it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic continues to play with KB really giving him his shit and just being like, hey, we know you're full of it. So let's just make sure we're doing this by the book. And ultimately, I think that's going to be really interesting to continue to explore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really, I'm really curious on that of like, what is his story here? Like, is he actually a Force user? Was this just sleight of hand? If he is a Force user,
it could have been sleight of hand.
Hey, you never know. This is Star Wars we're talking about. But like also alongside that, like, if he is a Force user, how? Like, what? Like, how did this happen? How do you learn about this? How did he learn to control it? Kind of stuff. Yeah, I think so much of this is interesting. I want to also shout out just the character, the new character for this episode, Kim, this like bat owl person. Again, just a cool little guy, but also having one of like the coolest like, oh yeah, this is just like my house on the moon that I have just a bunch of artifacts from the history of the galaxy.
It's also kind of weird because they did this weird thing where off camera you see Kim interacting with a bunch of the dials and doodads in her observatory, and it's practical. And then you meet the character of Kim, and it's fully CG. And it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know why, but just like one lane or the other. Just stick to a lane. I think we had the same issue. I had this issue at least with Yoda in the prequels, where they went from having it be practical, and then when George Lucas went in and did their remasters, whatever you want to call them, and made Yoda fully CG, and just like, oh, I don't love this. And it's just like, pick a lane and stick to it. You don't need to jump back between the practical and the CG here. Just like, if this is a new alien race that we're encountering for the first time, that's awesome. I love that we're getting these new fresh designs from some of the pirate crew with like the wolf guy or whatever, his first mate that's now taken over after the mutiny, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. You've got Kim here. You've got some really interesting designs from both, a droid perspective as well as an alien perspective, like a race perspective. I really hope we see more of that, but really just pick a lane. It doesn't have to be both, right?
See, I like Kim's design enough for me to give it the pass. I think, particularly because they are a flying creature, that's kind of hard to do with puppetry. Like, I do agree, like, go one way or the other. Like, just commit. But I really love the design of Kim, so I'm willing to give it a pass this time. But also just this whole area of, like, this building could be a treasure trove of Star Wars lore. And they're using it for one specific reference. It's kind of that thing that's like, oh, I could totally see them, like, using this to reference other things again. I love that Kim is, like leading up into Kim as well, like the way that Jod is like, so yeah, like this person's undoubtedly going to stab me in the back. And he is 100% right. Kim's first thing Kim does when we see them in this show is call the Republic so that they can take down this extremely well-known pirate. Like, of course. And then, like, oh yeah, like, these children are certainly kidnapped. Like, these children is, and to us alongside them to some extent, really do not understand the situation that they're in.
And I do think that we have to better understand the situation coming out of the next episode, because like the kids now understand, okay, there are people that don't trust you, and we no longer trust you. So now you have to, we need a bit of that background, a bit of that exposition into John's character and his flaws and what's gotten him to this point. And I really hope we get enough of that to have a satisfying next episode that isn't just like, and now we're doing a flashback for 90% of this episode.
Mm-hmm. I will say alongside that, one of the things that was really fun this episode was the X-Wing fight. The kids being convinced that these are the bad guys. Like, we know, because we're Star Wars nerds, that the X-Wings are the good guys. These children do not know that. They are convinced, because of Jod, that these are evil. Putting them in the gunner seats as well was so funny.
Kids had a blast with that, and I mean that's the whimsy of Star Wars through the eyes of these kids who don't really like. These kids are all of us as children watching Star Wars, really, right? Where they're sheltered from this universe, like they live in their sheltered world. They don't go out past the barrier, and now they're being exposed to this larger universe for the first time. And I think, like all of us, that sense of whimsy and awe for how things work, and the idea that, oh my God, I'm in the gunner seat. Like, you and I can both attest to wanting to be in the driver's seat of the Millennium Falcon in either Hollywood Studios or Disney's in Disneyland in California.
Yes, except that I realized that there's like way too much pressure.
But it's so cool. And like, we had that feeling with that attraction, the way these kids are now experiencing the larger Star Wars universe as they come into absolutely. This very, I would say, tried and true story of we're lost and we're trying to get home. But also home is this treasure planet. So like, what does that mean to the wider universe once we expose our world to these pirates? Like, it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. But I do think there needs to be more time spent in some of this background, so we know we have a better sense of character motivations going into the rest of this season and potentially future seasons.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. I think we're getting there. I think those first two episodes were breaking out and discovering this world, and I think this episode was starting the beginning of putting those pieces together. And I love that, like, we really are hamming home on this episode, whether it's in their actions or just within the cameo appearances, of like, we are addressing everything within Star Wars for this, because these kids do not know the history of any of it. Like, we see like the battle droid, like they don't know about the war. Like, they made it very clear.
They understand the history based on what they were taught. And I think the parallels between that and, I mean, I'm sorry to harp on this, the American education system is really interesting, where you've got aspects of the government wanting to minimize certain historical events in the way that it's taught to children. And you do see something very similar here, where they're living this sheltered life in this Orwellian 1984-esque society, and they only know what they're taught, and they're not taught what happened in the outside world, which is kind of insane.
Yeah, I love that bits and pieces of them learning of it. It definitely has felt familiar to learning some of those things that we weren't necessarily taught as Americans. Honestly, it reminds me a lot of a couple episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I think have been the best example of explaining that in pop culture. Also, because
I should watch that.
You really should.
I started it a few weeks ago and then fell off because.
Speaking of Avatar: The Last Airbender, when that X-wing comes down and like it opens up and we've got the pilot there, were you also expecting that to some degree to be Paul Sun-Young Lee?
I'm so mad that it wasn't.
Like, he's our guy. Like they started opening up, and I'm like, oh my god, is Teva back? I was like, is Carson Teva here again?
He should have been. Again, I just give me more Canada in everything, and it is appreciated. And we didn't get it here, and it made me sad.
Look, it's like I'm not upset. I just like that was just the perfect opportunity to put him in here, and I'm just yeah. Anyways, bring it back to like the kids' conversation with Kim here, like Kim pointing out, like learning, yeah, they're not aware of the war. They aren't aware of really either war, whether it is the Clone Wars or it is the Empire taking over,
The rebellion,
and the rebellion. They then also pointing out like the proto-republic artifacts on Fern's backpack, and like, oh, I wear this because I'm the head of class, and like, oh, well, you are holding on to a ridiculously old artifact. It's like all of that stuff together is like really what's keeping me invested in the show at the moment. Of like, what the hell is this society? What
How
is
do
really,
these two worlds collide?
It's
going to be
Great
really
War?
interesting.
Like we got I forget if it was this episode or last week, where we got the parents. No, I
That
think
was this
week.
episode. Yeah.
This episode.
Because you've got the person who works for, they're going to be like, don't worry, they're going to find the kids. It's no big deal. And then the bot comes in. They've gone beyond the barrier. We don't know what to do. Oh, God.
Yeah, like clearly something's up here. And we got our little bits and pieces as to explaining why Atten is hidden, but it doesn't explain everything else happening here. And I really like that. I like that we're getting that drip feed of figuring this out. Like, I don't think we'll understand everything about that until the finale, which is what I want from a show like this.
Or even future seasons. I'd be happy for them to leave some stones unturned to explore in future creative works, whether it be more seasons of the show, books, comics, wherever it ends up leading.
Mm-hmm. I hope we get like more Skeleton Crew. Like I genuinely love watching these kids. Yeah, this is the most fun Star Wars has been in years. Like
Probably
the
most fun since Mando.
Like I love Ahsoka. I love Mando. I love Andor. But all of them follow a much more serious plotline. And this follows a similarly serious plotline, but having it be about these kids, I think, just adds another level of whimsy to it that is really refreshing to see in something like this.
It's Star Wars being fun for the first time in a long time.
Mm-hmm. And maybe it's just because I'm a massive Goonies fan, but like it really is. It's fun for this. Like I really am having such a good time. Star Wars, man, it's back.
Give me more. I want more. I want it all. Mm-hmm. Why did you make me do this weekly, Griffin? I could have binged it all at the end.
Yeah, I will say, like, part of me is kind of wishing we were binging it.
I also like getting to get together with you every week and talk about this and all the other things that we record here, including future things you mentioned, like the recently released Dream productions that we're going to get into, going back to some series that we both wanted to explore for a long time that we haven't gotten a chance to do yet, as well as maybe some game.
See, now to do that, you actually have to sit down and play Marvel Rivals with me.
Yes, but I also need to finish Indiana Jones and the Great Circle.
Oh yeah, I haven't even started it.
So do you.
So...
that one's a ways off, folks.
Yeah, that one is very far off because I'm probably not going to play that until it comes to PlayStation. So...
No, I get that.
Anyways,
we don't have a date for that, right? It's just next year.
Next year,
spring.
or spring. Yeah, spring 2025.
Yeah.
I will also say, like, bringing it back to the episode for one more thing, really quick to shout out was I didn't even notice this until you mentioned it on the IMDb. Alfred Molina casually in this episode.
Oh yeah, I need to go back and watch it because I did not hear him. I wasn't listening for him, so I would need to go and hear that.
Mm-hmm. Just want to throw that out there for folks. Like, totally miss that personally. I think it's hilarious. But yes, other stuff coming. Got other stuff we're working on. Games, movies, TV, etc., etc. Plenty of stuff coming for y'all in the future. We will be back, hopefully soon, with the next episode of Skeleton Crew. Keep an eye out for that.
Definitely soon. It's weekly after all.
Yeah, it's weekly. Yeah, the question is, are we
What could
weekly?
happen? What could happen, Griffin?
It's not like there's like a major holiday coming up just around the corner or anything.
How does that line up actually with the holiday? So there's going to be an episode that drops on the 24th.
Oh, that episode's going to be late.
Well, because you have Christmas. My mom's birthday's in there. Oh man, yeah, That's gonna be a fun one.
We
To try
might
to
just
schedule.
we might just do the entire back half of Skeleton Crew together, but
Well, and so we have an episode that comes out on Christmas Eve, and then we have an episode that comes out on New Year's Eve. So,
ironically enough, New Year's Eve is significantly easier for me than Christmas Eve.
oh, me too. I have a baby. It means I'm not doing anything.
Fair enough. Anyways, folks, we'll figure out when we get episodes out We will see y'all in the next one. But until then, bright suns, be good to each other, and have a magical day.